And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our good friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They have a flavor for every freedom-loving American. You can try it for yourself or try it again because they've already proven to you just how good they are today, and get 10% off when you go to firstcup.com, promo code DACE. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. It'll be shipped to you within days of being roasted. They've got the roast on date right there on every bag. You will absolutely love it, and you'll also love the fact you're not giving your money to people who hate you. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE, and if you subscribe, you will get another 10% off for the life of your subscription as well at firstcup.com, promo code DACE. Coming up later on in the show, next hour, we're going to get back to a little Monday Ask Me Anything. You guys know the drill. I've not seen the questions. Todd has selected them. Aaron's got them loaded up. And no subject matter is off limits. Just remember, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people who ask questions. So we look forward to those coming up a little bit later on in the show. Bob Vander Plaats will join us at the bottom of the hour. It looks like Fox News has determined that their acceptable running mate choice for Donald Trump is Marco Rubio. They're pushing him over the weekend, so we'll get into Bob's thoughts on that and the entire Veep Stakes thing, which we talked about on the show last Monday in light of the New York court ruling. So we'll get into that coming up at the bottom of the hour. But until then, let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by for Hamas. That was one of the signs being held aloft by a large group of pro-Hamas orcs outside the White House over the weekend. The orcs chanted various genocidal slogans over and over again, along with this one directed at Joe Biden.
Hey, Joe Biden, you're a sellout! Pack your bags and get the hell out!
In addition to those chants at Joe Biden, some protesters held aloft a pretend severed head of the commander-in-chief. This is all fine. Meanwhile, in Israel, forces there conducted what's being described as a daring hostage rescue inside Gaza. They rescued 4 hostages who were being held by civilians in an area of Gaza before IDF forces were able to storm in over the weekend and rescue them. Checking in on Trump world, here's a Brothers Be Flippin' update with Congressman Byron Donalds.
Well, first of all, during the Trump presidency, he also signed into law reforms to criminal justice reform, the first step back, which actually helped get a lot of people released who were imprisoned under the 94 crime bill that was authored by Joe Biden. One of the worst pieces of crime legislation that's really impacted a lot of people in the black community.
You and I agree on the 94 crime bill. I marched on it.
Checking in on the Texas Democratic Convention.
Heart especially aches for our trans children. While the drag ban bill may have been blocked, the trans youth healthcare ban has gone into effect here in Texas, preventing access to hormone blockers that are medically necessary for more than just trans youth. Gender-affirming
those of you listening, what we're listening to is a so-called drag queen, just an awful joke of a caricature of a woman, droning on and on about transing children. That's the Texas Democratic Convention. In completely unrelated news, new research from Pew illustrates just how polar opposite reality is for most Americans. Asked to respond whether they agree or disagree with various prompts, Trump and Biden voters are living in different realities. Gun ownership does more to increase safety by allowing law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. 86% of Trump supporters agree with that. 23% of Biden supporters do. America's openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. 87% of Democrats agree with that. 36% of Trump supporters. The criminal justice system in this country is generally not tough enough on criminals. 81% of Trump supporters agree with that. Just 40% of Biden supporters do. Can't share a country with that. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs is being investigated for an alleged pay-for-play scheme after a report revealed a group home business that looks after vulnerable children was approved for a rate hike, see that as they were getting more money from the state, after it donated to her inauguration and the Arizona Democratic Party. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, a Democrat, said her office has launched a probe into the matter after receiving a request from State Senator T.J. Shope, a Republican who's also the Arizona Senate President pro tempore. The request came after a report in the Arizona Republic showed Sunshine Residential Homes, the operator of group homes for foster kids, was approved for a nearly 60% increase in taxpayer funds via the Arizona Department of Child Safety after previously being denied an increase. The increase, again, only came after the group gave huge donations to both Katie Hobbs' inauguration fund and the Arizona Democratic Party. In the sports world, Boston Celtics head coach Joe Mazzulla has his squad in the NBA Finals. Over the weekend, a race-baiting reporter asked him a question about being a black head coach. Here's how he responded.
For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches. Given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you not see it at all?
I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches.
And finally, Biden campaign co-chair Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was asked about Hunter Biden's gun charges when her satellite connection with CNN died suddenly, apparently.
I want to turn to a very different trial, and that is one that is going on in Delaware with the president's son, Hunter Biden. He is on trial for obtaining and possessing a firearm while under the influence of illegal drugs, which was against the law. Republican Lindsey Graham says that an average American would not have been prosecuted
Dana, are you there?
for this. Yes, Governor, can you hear me?
Did you just drop a beat?
Okay, it sounds like the governor can't hear me. You know what? We're going to take a very quick commercial break.
Some very convenient technological differences, and that's what happened while we were away.
Indeed. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. Remember back in the day when you could do all the normal things you wanted to in a day without feeling like you were made out of broken glass, walking on razor blades? Well, maybe those days could return. Living with pain is no joke. It's the kind of thing that can ruin your quality of life if you let it. But that's why Relief Factor was created. It's a drug-free supplement that was created by physicians who can prescribe drugs with the intent of trying to deal with what's probably the cause of your chronic pain, which is too much inflammation in your joints. Okay, that's why you have the chronic pain that you have. And you can take drugs, they'll mask that pain, work for a while. They may come with other side effects that can be debilitating. They wanted to create something that would get rid of those side effects. There's no guarantee it will work, but Relief Factor is that something at about 70% of the time. When people have, over the 1 million people that have tried the 3-week quick start over the years, they've hung around long term because of the results they've seen in 3 weeks or less. If you want to put it to the test today, it's just $20 to do that when you go to relieffactor.com. Get the 3-week quick start today for just $20 when you go to relieffactor.com. All right, coming up in the overtime today, I'm going to relay to you a conversation I had this weekend. I haven't talked to this individual in a few years, but over the weekend, out of the blue, I got, hate to name drop, but I'm going to. I got a phone call on Saturday out of the blue from former Speaker Newt Gingrich. And the conversation we had, I think, is entirely fascinating. I wasn't told that it had to be off the record. You know my general rule. If you tell me that, it's off the record forever. But if you don't tell me that, then it's not. Right? That's kind of how I've operated over the years, right? So if you tell me something's got to stay on the download, there's no one that you'll ever get to find that will tell you I've betrayed a confidence. But if you don't tell me that, well, I'm a talk show host. I'm probably going to talk about it, okay? This conversation in particular, I think that you want to hear about. But because of what it is he wanted to discuss, I don't want to put this out into the ether. All right? If prying ears are listening or tuning in, let's at least make them pay for it. Sure. Pay for the recon. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to make the other team's job easy for them. Okay. And so this conversation's a very Newt Gingrich thing. I mean, it was I've said over the years, there's only a couple of people whose intellects I think like make me on edge. Like, can I keep up with them? And he's one of them. Okay. I would not have even thought about this conversation. But what he prompted in me with what he asked me got me to thinking about it, and that led to a broader conversation. So, in essence, what Newt asked me to do, he said, hey, I'm calling some people around the country I know that are really smart. And we're trying to think of, get out in front of it, see if we can anticipate, what is the Hunter Biden laptop? What's the Russia collusion? What's the thing we don't know about, don't see now, don't contemplate or couldn't plan for that they roll out with later this year, right? So we hadn't even, I mean, we'll talk about anything on this show. We didn't even think about that. Like trying to, because one, it's hard trying to guess what literal demons will do. But I gave him some thoughts of what I thought that could look like. And I don't want to put them out in the ether. I don't want to give anybody any ideas. And in case I guessed right, and this is something they were planning, I don't want them to take it off the docket either because we put it out there. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to discuss it behind the paywall because I think it is a worthwhile conversation to have. And if they're going to spy on us, let's at least make them pay for it. Okay, so if you want to hear what those suggestions were, we'll give those later today for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. That's also where you can go to become a Blaze TV subscriber at blazetv.com/Deace. Again, we'll record that for you. It'll be up there later today at blazetv.com/Deace. And now I wanted to give you guys that heads up too, so you guys can start maybe thinking in the back of your mind between now and when we record that in about 2 hours, what maybe some of those diabolical schemes could be.
I have one already.
Oh, there we go.
I saw it being hinted at over the weekend.
All right. We'll do that in the overtime today. All right, let's get to what else is in Aaron's montage. Speaking of Newt Gingrich, I remember the first time I met with him individually was in the summer of 2011 at a sports bar here in Des Moines when he was running for president. And we just went back and forth for 2 hours on the state of the country, and he kept pressing at the time, now this is almost 15 years ago now, that this is the most divided the country has ever been since the 1850s, and you could see how things turned out then, right? Well, in the summer of 2011, the idea that we were going to literally have bearded lady UFC fighters breaking the faces of women, bearded lady swimmers breaking the national championship records of women, just that wasn't even on the docket. I mean, that wasn't even being debated. Barack Obama, just to show you how far back, at least in terms of cultural revolution, how far back 2011 was, Barack Obama had not come out in favor of gay marriage yet. I know what day that happened because I was a contributor on MSNBC on a panel at the very moment that it did. It was during the North Carolina marriage vote, which I believe was in 2012. That's how far that's how far back that was. Britney Spears still sane. That's how far back it was. We hadn't yet printed 80% of all dollars in circulation in the history of our country yet. I mean, go back and look at the things that the Tea Party was railing against in 2011, and folks, it looks like frugality compared to what is happening right now. And you see the graphic that Aaron shared there in the Pew Research survey, and you ask yourself a simple question. How can these two cultures peacefully coexist? And I'm here to tell you that the answer is they cannot. They cannot peacefully coexist. They can't. So there will be revival or there will be bust. Now, bust can look like a lot of things. Bust can be what I wrote about a few years ago, where we start at Harper's Ferry with New John Browns and you end in a Fort Sumter. Bust could look like what John Daniel Davidson at the Federalist came on our show a couple of months ago and said, well, America won't cease to exist. It'll just become evil. That could happen. Frankly, those two fates could occur simultaneously, right? Mm-hmm. If what John Daniel Davidson is forecasting is where we go, if without revival, then the odds that we will produce a John Brown that I forecasted when I wrote that piece for The Blaze a few years ago, those go even up higher then. I mean, if it's going to be openly evil and on an institutional level, there won't be anything that will stand in opposition to it, well, then you're just setting the stage all the more for a John Brown. Could just be you are looking at a Romans 1 judgment, last one out, turn out the lights. There's a lot of different ways bust could go, but bust is where it will go without revival. If you look at the rate of deceleration, let's go to what Aaron had from the Texas Democratic State Convention. Just 3 years ago, Democrats were adamant that Drag Queen Storytime Hour was not happening. And this was largely a figment of right-wing wacko imagination. David French even dubbed it that such a thing, if it existed, would just be a blessing of liberty. Something we'd have to put up with the soft underbelly of human depravity in order to have a broader, free society, right? Mm-hmm. 3 years ago. It was a simpler time. It was just 3 years ago. And now it's an official doctrine of the Democratic Party. 3 years ago, you right-wing wackos, this stuff is not happening. You just want to ban books. 3 years later, it's an official doctrine. It's a recognized dogma. It's a creed. That rate of deceleration with this level of balkanization, don't use the word polarization, we are beyond that. We're beyond that now. We're talking about balkanization. Like trying to create a Yugoslavia with traditional Muslim and traditional Christian cultures and put them in one landmass and just think because they're white and Slavic, they'll figure it out. No, they won't. They'll murder each other, which is pretty much exactly what happened, as I recall, right? That's what'll happen, yes. There are cultural divides that cannot be bridged. And you know why? They're not supposed to be. Neither side wants them bridged. The light will lie to itself that they can be bridged so as, like their father Adam, to remain passive in the face of evil. The dark will pretend that they can be bridged too until it has the advantage, and then it'll turn on you quicker than you can say tolerance, and you'll find out that tolerance from henceforth is now Tolerance Boulevard, a one-way street every time you turn on, either from the left or the right. No matter what direction you turn onto it, it's a one-way street.
Are you saying you see some holes in gays for Hamas?
Yes, I do. Yeah. And if you were a gay in Hamas, you'd be seeing some holes too. That's 3 years. And keep in mind, let me go look it up here real quick. Texas presidential voting history. Because we're only 4 years removed from Beto O'Rourke almost beating Ted Cruz in a statewide Senate race in Texas. We kept looking at those polls that showed Beto was only down 2 or 3 points, and we're like, oh, come on, there's no way that's true. Come election day, they turned out to be right on the money. Trump won Texas in 2020 by 5.5 points. Here's the margin of victory so far this century for Republicans in Texas prior to 2020. 2016, Trump won the state by 11.5 points. 2012, Romney won the state by 16 points. 2008, McCain, while he was getting poleaxed everywhere else, he won the state by 12 points. You're talking about a state as large as Texas, 12 points is a massive margin. 2004, George W. Bush, of course, he's a favorite son. He won the state by 23 points. 2000, he won the state by 21 points. Trump won it in 2020 by 5.5 points. So how does the Texas Beto O'Rourke almost beats Ted Cruz? Joe Biden at least makes Donald Trump break a sweat in Texas. So of course you're thinking, well, they're going to triangulate. They're going to moderate. They've got a real chance to win this. They're going to hide their darkness under a bushel, right? Because they can trick. That's not what they're going to do at all, is it? No. No. That's what we're going to do. We're going to hide our light under a bushel and not be pro-life anymore, not stand for anything anymore. We're going to do that because, quote unquote, we have to win. They want to win even more than we do. They just give the drag queen prime time at the Texas Democratic State Convention. By the way, Democrats haven't won Texas since Jimmy Carter narrowly won it over Gerald Ford in 1976. You and I believe, were still breastfeeding in 1976. Or were you on solid food yet?
I probably just arrived.
Just got off the knit probably around 1976? Yeah. It is truly revival or bust. I don't even want to contemplate. What it would mean if an open dementia patient whose running mate is even less electable than he is. Even less electable than he is. With the economy and the shape it is in and everything else, if he is still able to win.
And he is.
Everybody needs to understand what that would mean about the track that we are on. And I know everybody's very excited about what happened in Europe over the weekend. Two things. Number one, they're further down the rabbit hole than we are. Like, their normies are feeling pain. They're about 20 years ahead of us. Number two, and this is an even more important point that isn't getting brought up. These are parliamentary elections. They're not like our elections. The map you're seeing, for example, in France, it's Marie Le Pen. That's her name, correct? If of Le Pen's party compared to Macron's party and the other parties and how brown the country is, guys, every presidential election we do, no matter, it doesn't matter if Barack Obama's destroying John McCain. It doesn't matter. Every presidential election we do in modern times, if we did it the same way, a county basis or a parliamentary basis, the map always looks just like that. It always looks way more red than blue. I mean, Democrats are down to control of less than 20% of counties in America as we speak. This has been true here in our country for decades. But we don't have parliamentary elections here, do we?
No.
No, we don't. So a parliamentary election allows you an outcome like a state that we've already talked about before, like a North Carolina, where at the same time a Democrat governor wins statewide and then wins re-election. Republicans have super majority, veto-proof majorities in both houses of the legislature. How could you possibly have that? Well, yeah, parliamentary elections can create those kinds of outcomes because you're largely having district or regional elections. And you can build a critical mass to overcome the overall popular vote advantage the other side has. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have those here. Our founders did not want that. So, while I think the results are a positive, I don't know that they're directly achievable here as they are in some of these other countries. Two reasons. One, the parliamentary process I just mentioned. Two, the normies there are in much rougher shape than the normies here are. Now, when we talk a lot about dominion on this show, that it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, we can all see with the end of where the highway to hell goes here, right? We can all see how this ends, right? We can all see. But we're not so close to that exit that it's just inevitable that's where we're going. Now, on the path we're on now, it is inevitable that's where we're going. But if we were just more willing to use the peaceable means we have at our disposal to push back on this. And sometimes it's as simple as what Harrison Butker did last month. And sometimes it's as simple as what the coach of the Boston Celtics did last week. The power of that platform. And he's probably on his way to winning the NBA championship. His team's up 2-0. The silence in that room after he does that. And then the complete just puss move by that reporter who doesn't have the balls to then confront him face to face after that. So he writes some passive aggressive 1,500-word column at Yahoo that no one is going to read. Literally no one. That's the same that when you hear a term Christ-like, or you hear Christ use the term meekness or power under control, what does that look like? What kind of reaction when Jesus would just stand up to them and put it right back in their faces? The reaction you'd often get is what? And they just walked away. They didn't know what else to say. So they just quietly shuffled their feet, walked away. Is that not the reaction in that NBA press conference room?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. They got nothing. The silence actually goes on for another note longer than Aaron let it here in that clip. And then they just call for the David Aldridge, next question. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. Now, Harrison Butker and the coach of the Celtics, different sports, both claim to be Christian, but frankly, that's unfortunately in our day and age, not enough. There's a lot of people claiming to be Christian that are quiet as kept in the face of all forms of evil, correct?
Sure.
So there's something even more basic that the coach of the Celtics and Harrison Butker have in common. They're men. They're men. We need the men. That's you, if you're one of those in the sound of my voice. Every single one of us could do what these two guys did. You don't have more to risk than they do. You don't. By the way, you see Harrison Butker saved that dude's life in minicamp last week. The one that was having the seizure. Yeah. I've only got a few minutes to tackle this, but we cannot tolerate racialism on the right. We can't. That should be an absolute excommunicado, cannot happen, instant demerit system. First of all, the 1994 crime law was not a disaster. It was one of the, if not the last great bipartisan piece of legislation that was truly effective. It's the law that gave us the 3 strikes and you're out. If you commit 3 violent felonies, you go to prison for life. I think there's a lot of people living in some urban areas that would like some of those kinds of laws on the books right now. For Byron Donalds to be race baiting this and doing it from the right is frankly reprehensible. It's heinous. Wasn't racist at all. I can, similar to the Hamas stands, man, look at the innocents killed to get these hostages back. Well, if they had not taken any hostages, how many of those innocents would have been killed, Todd?
You know the answer.
It's a low number, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Because who's the people that actually just round up the innocents to kill them? The Hamas stands, right? So if they'd not taken prisoners, how many of the innocent quote-unquote Hamas stands would have been murdered or killed? Because no one was murdered. How many of them would have been killed? None. Similarly, a good way to avoid having your 3rd strike of a violent felony send you to prison for life is to do what? What would be a good way to do that?
Not commit felonies.
Not commit any violent felonies. Especially with 3 strikes and you're out. You got 3 chances to get this one right. Know what I'm saying? 3 chances to get that one right. Just don't do that. And you won't be in prison. So it wasn't a disaster. The First Step program, or as Daniel Horowitz dubbed it, jailbreak, was probably the dumbest legislation of the Trump administration prior to COVID. Now, what was an otherwise largely successful era for the Trump presidency before COVID? That was the dumbest piece of legislation they did, all in a cynical attempt to pander that generated no real difference in any racial outcome whatsoever in the election that was significant on any level whatsoever. And neither will this be. I mean, if we're now going to say on the right, like Byron Donalds is, that it's racist to be tough on crime, then tell me what we're even doing here. What is the purpose of even having an American right at that point?
I'm so cynical by now. I'm thinking maybe you should talk with Bob about Byron Donalds being the VP instead of Marco Rubio.
That's who I thought you were talking about at the top of the show.
No, I am confident Byron Donalds will not be the vice president, and I'll keep to myself the reasons for that, but very confident in that. But this is toxic. Why do we want to help the other side spread? You had Al Sharpton say, well, I marched against that, which is exactly why it was great and remains so. And ever since 1994, Democrats have agreed more with Al Sharpton than what Joe Biden used to think. And now we're going to race bait from our side? Nope, not on my watch anyway. Folks, America's colleges and universities are far less concerned today with encouraging critical thinking than discouraging it and replacing it with indoctrination. So it's no wonder why so many of our youngest generations are embracing cancel culture, denying free speech, celebrating terrorism, really opposing pretty much every legacy of American liberty. But I'm happy to report there is at least one college where students are still openly debating ideas, openly and honestly, where they can pursue truth together with their professors, and where America's great heritage of liberty is still being studied and revered. It's at Hillsdale College. As stated in their founding document back in 1844, Hillsdale's original mission was to offer the kind of serious liberal arts education needed to preserve the blessings of civil and religious liberty across the land. And this mission continues to guide Hillsdale to this day, whether it's on their first native Michigan campus, their DC campus, or anything else across the country that they support or are involved in. That's what Hillsdale's all about. If you want to learn more, you can watch a short video. It's just over a minute long, seeing how Hillsdale works and is working effectively to defend American liberty all over America. Take some time to watch this video today at DaceForHillsdale.com. That's F-O-R. DaceForHillsdale.com. Again, check it out at DaceForHillsdale.com. All right, let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vander Plaats. I'm a family leader. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really good. Glad to be here.
All right, glad to have you. So it appears that the Murdochs have put their thumb on the scale and have determined who they believe is Trump's acceptable running mate choice. And it's somebody that the network has shilled for in the past. You and I remember being on the Cruz campaign after the 2016 caucuses, remember? And Fox News spent the next week celebrating the greatest third place finish in the history of intergalactic competition via Marco Rubio, Mr. Dimples, right? All right. So essentially, this is they want Nikki Haley, but who's actually pro-life. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, my guess is I think they see that Marco Rubio brings a lot to the table. I think they see that he takes Florida off the map. There's the constitutional question that I'm sure, are going to address here in a minute. But and he brings a lot of, and he's been a staple on the network. So I think they see him as somebody who'd be a very qualified VP, gives a lot of added value to Trump, and maybe post-Trump, as you take a look at a 12-year vision versus a 4-year vision. I think that's what they're interested in. Sure. Okay, you're dealing with a guy who still right now is a coin flip whether he's even going to win. He's also pushing 80. Even if he does win, he is a lame duck the second he's inaugurated. Limited to one term. Yeah, limited to one term. So I think this is a lot about. I think Trump is looking for someone that will be effectively loyal to him. Okay, I think we all know how much the former president values loyalty. He makes that very obvious. I think he's looking for somebody who will be effectively loyal for him. And I think that there's other camps. I think if you're a MAGA hardcore person, you're thinking what you're thinking. You're thinking of 12 years, and you're thinking, I want J.D. Vance because he could take that mantle over. If you are a DeSantis person, you're kind of curious to see who he puts in there, because if he puts somebody like a Tim Scott or a Doug Burgum, that's not necessarily somebody who immediately is their own political brand that is formidable, that you think Ron DeSantis could not challenge that. And then if you're Fox News and you're thinking our average viewer is 70 and dying, and we are increasingly, how much longer can we hold on to kind of this stranglehold of the Republican primary electorate? And so we need a new cudgel. We need a fresh face, somebody who's younger, that can kind of be our cudgel into the system, our tip of the spear. Obviously, Nikki Haley's too pro-war and too small L liberal on a lot of issues to be palatable. He's never put Nikki on the ballot. Yeah, but he's close enough that that's palatable to them. Oh, sure. And so I think there's a lot of palace intrigue here, where I think Trump is just looking for whom will be effectively loyal to him. But the two major camps that are vying for control of the Republican Party right now are each kind of hoping that someone that represents a long-term platform that gives them an advantage is who the selection is. And there's a lot of dynamics that go into the choice. One is this is going to be a base election. It's going to be a turnout election, which means you need to maximize all the turnout from your base that you can. So for those reluctant Trump voters, can you get them to turn out with a compelling VP choice? Just for what you talked about, Steve, That's not a 4-year vision with Trump, but it's a 12-year vision that goes way beyond and going, you know what, but I could get behind that person for 12 years. There's also the thing with Trump saying, I want somebody that's just loyal to me and who's not looking beyond 4 years, meaning that way they're just completely loyal to me. And so then a name like Ben Carson comes into play. Ben Carson could help you with the African-American vote. He'd be exceptionally loyal to you. But if Ben Carson becomes the VP, it's going to be a wide open game on primary for 2028. So who Trump appoints as VP is going to be a clear signal. What kind of a caucus are you going to have? What kind of a primary are you going to have? And then it depends, what does his administration do? If the administration is very successful, like his first one, odds on that VP, whether it's Marco or J.D. Vance or something like that, they're going to have a leg up to move forward. If that administration isn't as effective as the first term, then it's going to be game on again in the primary. But I do think it does cast a vision for everybody when Trump says, this is the person that I want to be my running mate. Right now, Marco Rubio is a name that I hear all the time. Right behind that, I hear J.D. Vance. A name that I hear in my circles a lot that they think would be compelling. She has proven her loyalty. She would add value to the ticket, but she'd also be good for 12 years, would be a Sarah Huckabee Sanders, although she's just recently governor of Arkansas. Sir, there's a lot of palace intrigue, and that is why Fox News runs with that story yesterday, makes it their number one story, pushing it. There's a lot of people pushing their focus on what the VP looks like.
I got a call last week from a little birdie who worked in the Trump White House. Name you would know. And he told me that Rick Santorum is actually pushing Trump to make Mike Huckabee his running mate. Saying, and that the reason being is, one, Mike is likable, would be capable of being president from day one, has also proven that he is, I guess we'll say, very loyal to the Trump brand. And given his age, would not be somebody that would be constantly looking to differentiate himself either as a candidate or as the vice president, to position himself for future glory, like some of the younger names you're talking about that apparently Santorum is concerned, especially given how distracted Trump is likely to be for much of this year, whether it's the ongoing legal battles or the high likelihood he'll face some form of incarceration and then an appeal process. I mean, this person has to essentially be kind of a stand-in, okay, and who is going to stay, know their role, shut their hole and know their role, basically. And that Mike has proven he knows how to play ball in the Trump world. And so that was a name that Rick Santorum's actually been pushing, I was told.
Well, Rick Santorum's a good friend of mine. Mike Huckabee, a good friend as well. But and what Huckabee would bring to the table, Mike Huckabee would bring to the table, is that he would be 1,000% loyal. And if Trump wins, if the administration did really well, I could see Huckabee saying, no, I'm going to run for president myself. I mean, I don't think that's off the table, but I don't think that'd be Huckabee's focus. And that's where he becomes a compelling candidate. But that's the first time I've heard Mike Huckabee's name mentioned. I hear Elise Stefanik. I hear Burgum out of North Dakota. I even hear our own Governor Kim Reynolds, Glenn Youngkin. I think for a guy like Mike Huckabee, and this is where the platform comes into play, as we've been hearing rumblings that they're trying to change the platform, whether it be on the sanctity of human life or whether it be on God's design for marriage and family.
I am told that this is 100% true, and they are trying to swap out delegates in as much as 30 states to get to have a platform that just doesn't contain any of those issues this year.
So if that's the case, if that's what they're trying to do delegate-wise, is basically soften the platform not to be that, then all of a sudden Mike Huckabee does not make sense to me why they would take Mike Huckabee in, because he's going to be a champion for all those issues, as well as a Sarah Huckabee Sanders and people like that. So to me, that's when they look to say, how do we moderate on some of those issues that are important to guys like me or to you or to your audience?
Given the behavior that he has exhibited so far in this primary, like today, you have Warren Davidson and members of the Freedom Caucus are coming out and criticizing Trump for, his endorsements have, since he's ascended to essentially the kingship of the Republican Party, his endorsements have kind of been coin flip, great or terrible. Now, understand that before Trump, basically any time a national leader of the Republican Party weighed in on a primary endorsement, it was bad.
It was not a good
It was not good. So a 50% still an F, by the way, but it's 100% better than what it used to be.
It's a little bit like the Des Moines Register when you're looking for their endorsement. And I told my campaign manager back at the time, Eric Wolfson, I said, let's just concede the endorsement to Branstad.
Let him have it.
Because that would help us at that point.
Now, this cycle, it's been less than 50-50. This cycle, collectively, his endorsements have been very bad from an ideological perspective. And I think that's a clear attempt. He is trying to avoid any form. This is why he said, I think, vote however you want on whether to continue funding the FISA program, which was really the birthplace of the coup against his presidency. I think he's trying to avoid at almost any cost, with one exception, Bob Good in Virginia, because there's a personal grudge there. But Bob Good aside, he is clearly making attempts to avoid any form of internecine fight with the quote-unquote party establishment in this election. Okay, and is just placing as many of their people in positions of prominence in the party as he can at this particular stage.
So if you take that input, though,
that's why I cannot. That's why I think that works against a J.D. Vance. Okay, because I think that is. Because the party establishment would look at him the same way that you are. Well, that's a guy that can clearly take over this MAGA label day one after the old man is gone, and we don't want that. And that's why I think if you look at most of the names that are being bandied about, Stefanik, Scott, who actually got rid of some of Trump's best judicial appointments by smearing him as racist when they weren't. Okay, so Scott. Who was calling cops racist in the summer of 2020. So you have Tim Scott, Elise Stefanik, Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, who doesn't know what a gender is. Okay, right? These are all people that would fit into that world, that would be palatable to having a party establishment not try to siphon off 2 or 3% of a quote unquote never Trump vote this time. J.D. Vance is the one exclusion to that.
Yep. So I got asked yesterday by a friend that you would know. I won't call him a little birdie, but a friend that you would know, texting back and forth. And he goes, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it'd be compelling if he would make a play for Ron DeSantis. One is it would show, try to bring the puzzle together. But two is you're going to need somebody who's got some real leadership chops. DeSantis has proven I've got leadership chops. If you're going to be under this cloud the entire time of your presidency, get somebody there and somebody that can carry the ball and provide real leadership for this country. So I still think DeSantis makes a lot of sense. If it's not DeSantis, I go to a person like a Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She has proven she can be loyal to you while still being her own person. And I think she would add value to the ticket. Now, on some of those issues that you want to stay away from, she's going to carry those issues to the ticket as well. And so that's where it becomes a hard play. I do think the VP announcement is going to be a clear indicator of who am I going to start surrounding myself with in the cabinet as well. And the people are going to be looking at that. That's why there's such intrigue on who's he going to put as the VP.
Well, I cannot see a universe where Donald Trump asked Ron DeSantis to be his running mate.
Right. Well,
I just can't. I mean, I don't think the level of slobbering that Trump demanded of Mike Pence, which frankly came natural to him anyway, but there's no one of the 9 realms where I think Ron DeSantis is capable of that.
But at the end of the day,
level.
Steve, I think what it is that Donald Trump
Sarah Huckabee Sanders as a woman doesn't quite have to do that.
Right.
The men around Trump have to be complete gobblers, have to be willing to be gobblers. The women are permitted more independence, okay? But the men, there can only be one rooster in the hen house, brother, okay?
But I believe Trump knows more today than even back in 2016 and in 2020 that this is a must-win election for him. So who's going to be the best candidate to be that must-win, regardless of anything else? And if the must-win is you got to get a guy like Ron DeSantis around you, I think he'd say, I'll go that route at that point.
Well, the other issue you have if you pick somebody from Florida is you have the unadjudicated constitutional question of whether two people from the same state can be on the ticket, which is kind of an obscure thing, like the natural born citizen thing. What does it mean? But that's the other thing too. Is do you end up in court again with Democrats for months and months trying to figure that out?
And so if that's the case, that's Marco Rubio.
Yep.
That's Mike Huckabee. That's Ben Carson.
That's Byron
That's
Donalds.
Ron DeSantis. It's Byron.
Yeah.
You start eliminating a bunch of people at that point. There's a lot of people residing in Florida. Kudos to Ron DeSantis, who want to be Floridians, and Trump being a Floridian himself. So
I think history has shown asking Donald Trump to set ego aside and see a broader perspective is a losing ask. Okay.
But does a freezing cold courtroom for multiple weeks going through this ridiculous
I don't know the answer to that.
Does
I'm
he
not around
say,
him enough,
this is a must win?
I don't know.
My question to you though, who in your opinion is his best choice?
Well, I mean, Ron DeSantis would be the best choice. He could campaign from day one. He could be president from day one. He's the second most popular Republican in America, and it's not even close after him.
And it'd be a team of rivals with like an Abraham Lincoln situation.
Yeah, I mean, that, in terms of overall merit, it's really not close. But we saw in his White House, whether it's Omarosa or Scaramucci, merit is not always the primary means by which these selections are made. Rex Tillerson, Reince Priebus, okay, that we saw that. Okay?
But the things have changed in those 8 years. Now,
the one time that he did make a merit-based decision is when he was desperate to save his presidency, and he brought Bill Barr in. Now, Bill Barr was masterful ending the Russian collusion narrative. He was useless as mammary glands on a bowl on everything after that. But his primary mission was to end the Russian collusion narrative, and he did do that. Okay, he did do that part. Okay, and that's the one hire that you can see where your example of where the guy recognized, okay, I just need someone who can. I need a killer here. Okay, I don't need a buddy anymore. I don't need a slobberer. I just need someone. I need a mercenary who can do the damn job.
So let's play this out, and I know we're out of time. If he put Ron DeSantis on the ticket, do the Democrats for sure lose Biden at their convention?
I think the odds, especially if they have this debate in a few weeks and he face plants, I think the odds go greatly up. Yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah. You guys have a quick thought on this in the 30 seconds we have left? Either one of you?
Well, I think a guy who goes the furthest right you can possibly get, but would still compromise because he lost so much 8 years ago. We haven't even mentioned Ted Cruz, and I think we should because I think he checks a lot of boxes.
Okay. Aaron, you have anything?
I just think this needs to be a compelling choice. Just a compelling choice. Something inspired. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay. Your turn to ask.
It'd be a shock to the system if he put DeSantis. I mean, everybody would be shocked if he did it.
Hour 2 is next. All right, we are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the SteveDeace.com inbox. Just email us, steve@stevedeace.com. DEACE is the email address and how to spell the last name. You can also like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then if you are listening to the podcast and you like the podcast version, thank you so much. Please feel free. We would love it also if you left us a 5-star review. Thank you to all of you who have. And then hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow. And that way, every time we do a brand new episode, it will show up in your podcast feed every single time. And we appreciate each of you that has done that for us as well. Also appreciate our friends over at Trust and Will. You start hitting 50 like I have now, and you start thinking, time to start planning for the last lap here around the track, and to make sure that things are spelled out very clearly, what you want to do for the kids and the grandkids and future generations. And that's where Trust and Will comes into play. We had to update our estate plan. We chose to use them. Wife came back and just raved about how easy it was, how customizable it was. With Trust and Will, you can create and manage a custom estate plan starting as low as $159. Just go to Trust and Will and the word trustandwill.com/ trustingwill.com/Deace for 10% off plus free document shipping. Again, secure your assets, protect your loved ones. All right, with Trust and Will, get 10% off plus free shipping. That's what we use in our house to update our estate plan. We use Trust and Will. So go to trustandwill.com/Deace. Again, trustandwill.com/Deace. You'll get 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/Deace. With that, we have been unable to do this for the last couple of weeks, but it is good to have Ask Me Anything back in its customary second hour Monday time slot. We have solicited questions from our followers on Facebook. I have not seen any of these questions in advance. Todd, you have selected which ones that we're going to do. Anything that stood out to you in general without giving anything away about the questions we're about to go through?
Well, a lot of people wanted you to do what you and Bob basically just did. So you already checked off a pretty big box, and the rest we'll see.
All right. Aaron, you've got the questions. Fire away, brother.
We'll start with this from Liz Thompson. It's time to reassign mascots for the two political parties. I say a fox for the Democrats, known for their cunning and deceitfulness. I can't decide between an ostrich or a demented circus monkey for Republicans. Maybe a demented circus monkey wearing a T-shirt with an ostrich on it. What do you think?
I would, for the Republicans, I
think this is way more serious a question than what most of the Republicans are doing over there. So I think this is robust.
For the Democrats, I loved your idea. Who was that again?
Liz.
Liz, I loved your idea, Liz, of the fox. But for the Democrats, I'd even go more on the nose. I would just pick a flat out serpent. Just a flat-out, fork-tongued serpent is what I would do. For the Republicans, in fact, you know what? Let's lean into this fully. Let's lean into the fact that we are living in a time maybe never before in our nation's history that the war waging daily in the unseen realm is spilled out just vibrantly and noticeably here in the physical world, the material world that we can see. And let's combine that with our show's emphasis on a biblical worldview, and let's lean into it all the way. Let's give the serpent to the Democrats and the sheep to the Republicans. Let's just do that. Let's just go all the way. Sheep are the absolute dumbest and most anxiety, fear-ridden mammals in the phylum. And that is whom the God that loves us more than anything in this universe most often compares us to in his word. And I mean, the Democrats, man, they're just an open demonic construct at this point. So let's just go serpents and sheep. Any arguments with either one of those?
None. Nailed it.
Okay.
Moving on, let's go to Julie Feller McManus, who asks this: can you or Glenn, or both combined, put out a list of conservative charities that are worthwhile to give to? Preborn is obviously on my list, but people like me who want their gifts to count get lost amongst other types of charities, especially those connected to January 6th.
So basically you're asking Glenn to launch a charitiesitrust.com? Essentially, it's a great idea. It's a painstaking process. I would say, in general, you are better off giving locally,
for sure,
where you can vet people more closely and know the relationships better, just in general. In the past, I have said on this show, when it comes to all the big, national known Christian right groups, the only one I would give money to, my own money to, is the American Family Association. They're the only ones I've seen that actually try to win. And it's not, well, I'd like to win, but I need to accomplish these financial remuneration goals and need to make sure I've secured my speaking slot. I won't, this may give it away if I give you the name or if I give you the circumstance, but there was one particular Christian right leader who, when we were doing the whole release the delegates thing in 2016, and I was a part of that, was with us the entire time, and then Trump offered him a primetime speaking slot at the convention, and he just flipped on us for that. Straight up true. Straight up true. So I would, I would always rather give to an organization like a Family Leader, which exists in multiple states now, but isn't, sitting there with a branch office on K Street in DC. You know what I'm saying? And they exist in multiple states, but all of their state apparatuses, or is it apparati? It's apparatuses, right?
I think so.
All of their state apparatuses have great amounts of autonomy, meaning that the state organization there is doing the work, and if the Family Leader can come alongside and help with funding and things of that nature, because you know your state better than they do. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So of the big, massive Christian right groups, the only one I'd give my own money to is the American Family Association. And you're asking me to take up something I frankly don't have time for. I will tell you, before we urge you guys to give money to anybody on this show, we vet them fully. And if it's not somebody as much fully, well, let me put it this way, as fully as I can. I'm not going to hire like private investigators and forensic audits, but as fully as I can. And can I come to the conclusion that I would give my own money to it? And if I wouldn't give my own money to it, the answer is no. And if I would, then the answer is yes. And there have been, I won't again name the organization. We had one organization that came to us a few years ago that I have known the people running it for many years, and was just beyond disappointed with how much they had punted on the entire COVID stand invasion. You guys remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Because these conversations were taking place off the air.
Yes.
And so I used the leverage that they wanted to be on the show to get them to actually activate on a couple of parts of this issue. And then once they did, then I let them on the show and we raised money for them. So, but you're right to be asking that question. On the J6 stuff, I don't know, man. I don't know. You know what I would do on the J6 stuff is I'd get a hold of Nick Searcy, who just did the fantastic film with actual J6ers, and ask him, hey, who have you seen is actually helping these people? And I'd ask him. That's what I would do.
Next up, Paul JC asks or says, I really feel the conversation of DeSantis and Trump teaming up on the GOP ticket needs more attention. There's no other possibility that will ensure a win in November.
Well, I will say this. I don't think there's any combination that ensures a win in November. And let me state why that is. In fact, this will be a spoiler for the overtime. But since it's something I've already talked about before, and many, many times, it's already out there. Okay. But we are dealing with a turnout operation on the other side. And it's funny now how much, like, every time anything came up, we had to deal with this issue every time, the election fraud issue, right? And now that we're actually in an election, now it's just like we're going to pretend like we're going the other way. So like that was the excuse why things could never happen or get done, was election fraud. And now actually when we need to be talking about it and planning out for it and concerned about it, now we're kind of like pretending like it's not really a problem. Well, it kind of isn't a problem now, but not in a good way. Meaning like, bad analogy, best one I can think of off the top of my head. Back in the day, man, if you went into Memorial, if you went into, what was a Memorial? What was the Assembly Hall? You went into Assembly Hall in Bloomington with Bob Knight on the sidelines, and you were a Big Ten basketball fan in that era, or of an opposing team or an opposing coach or player. You just knew you probably had to be 8 to 10 points better than the Hoosiers to win in Assembly Hall that night, right? That's just a given. Because you knew Knight was going to lose his mind and get virtually, the refs are going to be beyond intimidated, and he was going to get virtually every judgment call, right? That was just going to happen. Okay, it's back in those days, it was kind of basically a glorified high school arena with the fans just right on top of you and everything else, like a scene out of Hoosiers. And you got the other coach over here who's like 6'3" and 240 pounds, losing his poop. And the referees, who weigh $105 are scared, he scared the dickens out of them. So you just knew if you were going to play Indiana in Assembly Hall, it didn't matter if Isaiah Thomas was the point guard or Marlo Thomas was the point guard. You had to be 8 to 10 points better than them that night to win, because they were probably going to attempt more free throws than you were going to make. They were just going to get right. That was just going to happen. And you could and coaches tried to fight it for a while, but then after a while, it just became the norm. It just was a sunk cost, and you just knew, by the late 70s, you just knew that's how this was going to go, right? And that was just the reality of playing at Assembly Hall against Indiana. See where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's kind of what we have allowed to happen with their turnout operation. And now that's just what we're calling it now. Well, they have a turnout advantage. Okay, what's the turnout advantage? What is it? Well, let's make sure we itemize what this turnout advantage is, shall we? Just a refresher to make sure everybody knows what it is we're talking about. What we're talking about is that they've always done this. I mean, I remember listening to Rush growing up talking about walking around money with black pastors. You know what I'm saying? And when I mentioned this to Newt Gingrich, he brought up to me that he was quoted in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in August of 1973, so I'm 1 month old, right, as saying he had to win outside the margin of cheating. So that they were doing this kind of stuff in urban areas back then. And that's true, okay? That's true. I mean, you would have heard me talking about Obama's going to have a turnout advantage in some of these neighborhoods against Romney, so you got to win outside the margin of cheating. I was using that phrase 10 years ago, okay? That's not what we just saw. What we just saw were mountains of ballots dropped off, like the climactic scene of Miracle on 34th Street with the Santa letters. Except these are just ballots. And in the middle of the night, like what you see in banana republics or with communist dictators. Hey, we found a new badge. Okay? And that started off being called fraud. It then went to being called ballot harvesting, and maybe something we need to try to reclaim on our own side. Now it's just called, well, that's their turnout advantage. Well, there's always a home court advantage everywhere you go. Even a crappy team gets some home court advantage, right?
Sure.
Okay. But did anybody else have a home court advantage like Bob Knight in Assembly Hall did with the referees anywhere in America during their heyday? No. I mean, everywhere else, there's a reason why handicappers give the home team in any sporting event 3 to 5 to 6 points of an advantage, because there are advantages to playing at home. One of them being the crowd getting on the referees. But what went on at Assembly Hall with Bob Knight and the level of intimidation there in his heyday was way beyond the norm. And that's what's gone on here. And now it's just our new normal now, right?
Yes.
And so here's what that means. We have no idea what the margin of cheating is. We don't know what it is. We don't. I mean, they have created... Please listen very carefully to what I'm about to say next. The Democrats have been permitted to create an environment where almost, I cannot think of an outcome that they could conjure up out of Washtenaw or County or Philadelphia County or Fulton County or Wayne County or Milwaukee County or what's the one, the Phoenix County, Maricopa. I cannot think of what they could roll out with that if you question it now, you're a radical, you're an insurrectionist. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The baseline that's been established here, we don't know the answer to this. We just don't.
You can board up and black out windows in real time, we don't know. And nobody does anything.
Correct. We just don't. I don't know what it is. And so if you go look at 538 did this, and I verified it myself. If you go look at contested off-year special elections in 2023 and through the first quarter of this year, Democrats outperformed either the partisan breakdown or polling by an average of 8 to 9 points. And I keep going back to Michigan. The final day of the 2022 midterms, Gretchen Whitmer had a 1-point advantage in the Real Clear Politics polling average. She won by 10 points over Tudor Dixon. I don't know. Do you know what the number is?
Nope.
I don't know. I don't either. I don't know short of 120% turnout in Fulton County, Georgia. Does anybody know what outcome they could come out with in Fulton County, Georgia? That anyone would feel like, they have standing to challenge what that does to the statewide result? Or Maricopa County, or many of these places. We don't know the answer. They are in total control. They control what the law is, and the law is not what the state legislature says. It's what is done is the law. So they control what the law is, how it's enforced, who the vote counters are, how the votes are counted, who gets to watch the counting of the votes, who is reporting the counting of the votes. So now take my Bob Knight analogy, and let's just say he's not just intimidating the refs, but now he's picking the refs out. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Bob Knight alone gets to meet with the referees before the game. All right, here's how we're going to call the charge. Whenever my guys get run over, whether their feet are set or not, that was for you, Todd. Whether their feet are set or not, it's a charge. And when their guys get run over, even if their feet are set, it's a block. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and the other side is the Washington Generals.
Yeah.
Like in Wisconsin, the Republicans, those drop boxes were illegal. The Republicans said, "You do you."
I don't know. I have a hard time believing that a group of people who in 2016, with no evidence at all, claimed that Donald Trump won the 4 decisive states by less than 80,000 votes because Vladimir Putin personally extended the hand of God to interfere on his behalf, and then turned around and had an election where they had complete control of the election apparatus in all these places, and despite losing almost every bellwether county in the country. What's a bellwether county? A suburban swing district county that typically determines the momentum of an election. They lost, what was it, all but one of them, I want to think. Wasn't it like 16 and lost 15 or something like that? I know they lost all but one of the bellwether counties, and yet they came up with a process by which the 6 decisive states, they won them by less than 40,000 votes because they just so happened to get the exact turnout that they needed out of the various counties that I just mentioned in these states. And oh, by the way, drag queens are at their conventions saying openly, "We're here for your kids." I am sure we can count on those people to count all the votes legitimately and honestly. I'm positive of it. In fact, gentlemen, your thoughts?
See, this is why when you and Bob were just talking, but off air, and because just didn't have time to get to everything, about the opportunity, the legitimacy of any VP candidate, whether it's DeSantis or anybody else, to say no if offered the job. If it's a straight up, you can count on the vote, I think the answer is, for most people, probably no. But in this context, yeah, you can turn this down. I mean, what do you Russian roulette at the deer hunter table? Who knows what this is?
I just don't know. I would have told you heading into 2020, I have a lot of experience with elections. What it takes to overturn a statewide result, if you win by a couple of points, is extraordinary. Okay? Well, and then I saw the extraordinary. Just sheets of ballots in mail bags. We literally reenacted the climactic scene of Miracle on 34th Street, where they bring all the Santa letters into the courtroom. We did that in Fulton County. We did that in Wayne County. We did that in Milwaukee County. We did that in Maricopa County. And then
the public response to that 2 years later was the red wave that didn't happen.
Exactly. And it's important we need to reset this, because I am broken until something external puts me together again. I cannot put myself back together after what I saw in 2022. I cannot. So I need to see us beat their turnout operation. I need to see it. Otherwise, and I need to see how we did it and what that looked like, because I have no precedent for what that looks like or how we did it. I don't know. Because I don't know what the margin of cheating is at this point. I don't know what it is. I mean, they just twice as many bags get dropped off in Milwaukee County at 4 a.m. Does it? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, One already.
What'll be done about it?
Just one's already a felony. No one cared. Why wouldn't they do 10?
I don't know. I don't know. So that's to answer the question again. I don't believe there's any combination that guarantees any form of victory, because I'm not entirely sure of how a victory is achievable now. I know how it's not. Like, I know you can't lose independence and win. I mean, that just can't happen. Okay, so, and Trump's own poster in his last poll, McLaughlin, had Trump still losing independence. So there's still, I know, I'm confident in still what doesn't win. I'm not entirely sure what needs to happen to win now, just because nothing was substantively done in any of the states I just mentioned to stop them from just doing this again and then more. I mean, if Gretchen Whitmer is going to make up on Election Day 10 points of public polling, not in one poll, guys. Like, everybody in Florida always points to the Quinnipiac poll. They're a crappy pollster, by the way. Don't ever follow anything they say. But the Quinnipiac poll that had DeSantis losing by 7 points and then he won on Election Day, well, that was just one poll. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, the RCP polling average of all the polls had Gretchen Whitmer up by 1 point, and she on Election Day, and that day she won by 10. If we're making up 9 points now in a statewide election in one of the most populous states in the union, I don't know what the margin is then. Is that wrong? Paranoid? I don't know. I'm just being honest. I don't know what it takes to win now. I know how you lose, but I don't know what it takes to win. I do think DeSantis comes with 0 negatives. 0. Other than you're probably in some court, and maybe it gets thrown out by a federal judge in 5 minutes. Okay? It's probably a federal judge that either Trump appointed or a Florida judge that DeSantis did. So they probably throw it out in 5 minutes. But if you pick any of these Florida people, I think the Democrats are going to go to court, if nothing else, just to make you waste money and time there. Fair?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And adjudicate the question. So I think that happens whether it's Ben Carson, any Donalds, DeSantis, any of the Florida people. I think that happens. What that looks like, I don't know the answer to that.
Going back to where you kind of began this monologue at, I don't understand, and I don't really think I want to understand, but I'm not sure, so I'm putting it out there. It was like prior to the GOP primary. Did we even have one? Prior to the GOP primary.
No.
It was like our justification, and I'm talking about basically anybody here. This was more of a phenomenon I saw on social media, on X. Maybe you saw it in your inbox. But our justification, like our salvific justification, you guys never talk about voter fraud. You guys never talk about election fraud. You guys never talk about J6. None of that is true, by the way. But it was, anytime there's a hard truth or something that we were stepping on shibboleths, a way to dismiss us. And I just saw this in my own mentions, is you never talk about voter fraud. You never talk about election fraud. It's like, what must I, it was like our now that we're actually now that we're actually at the pearly gates.
You cannot talk about it. And we got this thing on lockdown. We're going to automatically win no matter what. Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's because this isn't sports to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I completely get it because I come from sports talk radio. And for most people, that's what this is. It's really not. It's serious until it's not. It's really a place of it's an idolatrous pastime that they obsess about, and when they lose, they get really pissed off about it and then just move on to, I promise we're going to win the next game. It's not. And so, the first conversation you're talking about, that was the off season. Let me put it in this parlance.
Yes.
In the offseason, when no games are immediately to be played.
Who's the offensive coordinator for Iowa? What are we going to do at quarterback? Something's got to change.
Yes. We all agree that so I'll use your team since you brought him up, that we can't go on with this Iowa offense and we need a bold voice, things of that nature. Okay. Then you hire a guy that got fired from his last job because he sucked coordinating because the offense failed. All right. And when he first gets hired, everybody's open to that conversation, right? And they're contemplating it. Now that we are just about a month away from Big Ten Media Days, who's talking about that?
They're winning 9 games again.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. That
10 games.
Because now that the emotion of the game is afoot, all right, logic takes backseat, and now I need that emotion fed. You see what I'm saying? So in the off season, when there's no immediate game afoot, we can be critical, clinical. We can look at things and have a jaded view. But once the games are afoot, once the games are here, and that dopamine hit that I get either from winning or from bitching and moaning about losing is right on the doorstep, I need you to pass the sugar, honey. All right, and a spoonful of sugar, if not a kilowatt full of sugar, helps the medicine go down. That's what I need. And so now we're going to act as if we're going to go from obsessing to the point that there's no point in even voting again because election fraud is so bad, to now that the election is here, look at the polls! And it's like election fraud never existed. Except I have to factor that into my analysis because I don't know what the margin of cheating is anymore. I don't know what it is.
What's the most obvious? I mean, that about the sports analogy is good, but what's the most obvious reason in politics? They figured out how to grift this thing either way, win or lose. So why are they particularly concerned about?
Correct.
Anything.
Correct. It's too it's too late to do something about it now. We've had 4 years. Ballots will be printed here in the next 90 days. Okay. Early voting will be starting here in August in some places, right after Labor Day, and in the 1st of October everywhere. So it's too late to do anything functional about it now. So you can't raise money on it now because that's clearly a scam, right? But if you lose again because of it, then the amount of money you're going to raise on this in December, January, and February will be, a colossus. Correct. Yes.
So all the worst answers today.
Yes.
Just all of them. Good.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
By the way, I'm not intentionally giving you all the worst answers.
Yeah, because I kind of want to shoot you right now. I mean, this is...
I'm not, believe me, I'm not pleased with the answer I just gave you. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, but I don't know what the margin of cheating is, and no one, I think, can tell you what that is. And here's the thing, too, it varies in places. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It varies in places. Okay. Do I think Arizona, they could make up a 10-point, can they make up 10 points in Arizona like they could in Michigan? No. I don't think they can do that there. Can they make up 5? Can they make up 4? I don't know. I would have said no before. You know what I'm saying? I would have said no before. I think it's possible now. Okay. So that's the other problem, is because this has become parochial. It depends on the place what they can get away with and what they can't. Rest assured, though, you're going to find out what that is, one way or the other. You're going to find out what that is. They're going to make sure of it.
All right, this is a quick question, but it requires probably a little bit longer answer, so we'll tease this and you can answer after the break. David Geiger asks, is the true meaning of a rainbow lost forever? I've been illustrating a book, and I was going to put a rainbow on the page, but I couldn't do it because of what it means to so many people now. So David is an illustrator. He has a question about the true meaning of the rainbow and whether or not he should actually use that in the book that he's illustrating.
This is an excellent question. And it's the kind of thing that the church has wrestled with from the very beginning. Also, whether to take pagan events and festivals and retcon them and refit them to fit, a biblical worldview, and whether to do that or not. So, I like this question. We'll definitely tackle it for sure when we come back. Stay tuned. Well, we did just get asked to do Charities I Trust. Thankfully, Glenn has had the time to do realestateagentsitrust.com. And so if you are getting immersed in the Let's Go Brandon real estate market during these unprecedented times, make sure you dare not venture into these murky waters without an agent that you can trust. Where would you find said agent? At realestateagentsitrust.com. There, we will hook you up with an agent who has got a proven, vetted track record. We don't just list anybody there. We make sure that they are who they claim they are, and they can help you. They know the best practices. They know the ins and the outs to get you where you want to go, whether that's another part of town or another part of the country. They can get you to the end game you want, the outcome that you want, and a lot of times the agents will connect you with will be right here in this audience, so you guys have a similar value system in common. All right, so get started today at realestateagentsitrust.com. Head over there now. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. And with that, let's reset the question from, is it David that was just asked? Go ahead.
So David Geiger asks, is the true meaning of a rainbow lost forever? I've been illustrating a book. I was going to put a rainbow on the page, but I couldn't do it because of what it means to so many people now.
So this is an excellent question. And this is not unique, okay? The church has, from the beginning, debated symbols and cultural imagery and how much of it has been co-opted, or whether the church has co-opted from the other side as well, quite often, frankly. And that's where a lot of the holidays and stuff that we celebrate as believers today are examples of this, okay? Here's the best answer that I would give on this. Because the rainbow no longer has an objective symbol or standing in our culture today. It's no longer just a scientific phenomenon that you exist after it rains or on a sunny day. If as kids, we used to pull the hoses out. We used to run through sprinklers, right? And you'd see if you've had on a sunny day, you'd have the rain. If it got wet enough with the hose or the sprinkler, you'd see a rainbow and you get all psyched up. Okay, it's lost. It has no longer does it have an objective meaning that is not religious in nature. So in that case, I would not invoke it unless it was going to be religious in nature. Because if you invoke it neutrally, meaning if the point of why you are putting a rainbow on the cover is it's pretty, the vast majority of people are going to instantly associate that scientific phenomenon not with beauty, are they? No, they're going, and even though your rainbow might be the original and real rainbow with 7 colors and not 6, most people aren't going to count them. You see what I'm saying? So the objective meaning of the rainbow as an observable phenomena that people of all beliefs just happen to think is cool to beautiful to pretty is gone. At least in the West it is. I agree with you there. I would not, however, say the true meaning has been lost forever. I would just say that because nothing, not one syllable of God's word will not be fulfilled. And whether Jesus comes back tomorrow or 10,000 years from now, who's going to get the last word on the meaning of the rainbow?
God.
Yeah, he is. Now, I would not invoke it unless it was in order to put the proper religious meaning to it. Meaning that I'm using the rainbow as it was originally created and intended by God to counter this demonic construct. Because any other portrayal of the rainbow nowadays will be seen as what? The other religious iconography, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's really well done, but there's right now during Pride Month, there's that image of parent holding up a black umbrella and the rainbow is actually like raining down and bleeding over them, and the parent is holding it up to protect his children. That speaks to your point. I mean, it's a cautionary tale now instead of being a sign of hope.
Correct. So I would, in this era, I would, especially when you're dealing with kids, I would stay away from it unless it was specifically to put the original and proper religious meaning behind it, to counter the current religious meaning. Because there's no objective depiction of a rainbow today. That's a great question, though. Thank you.
Next, Craig Ellis says, if we were in control of the Justice Department, why couldn't we use civil asset forfeiture on criminals such as Anthony Fauci and hit him where it hurts, in the back pocket?
The only reason we would not is if you view the practice of civil asset forfeiture in and of itself as immoral. Now, I don't. I mean, I view the way we practice civil asset forfeiture is often immoral. But I, the Bible says the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. I don't have a problem with civil asset forfeiture as an objective standard. I mean, God sends the Jewish people into Canaan. Take their land from them. I've given it to you. And destroy everything they once had, and then it's yours. That's sort of an act of civil asset forfeiture, is it not? Mm-hmm. Okay? Manifest Destiny was kind of an act of civil asset forfeiture, and I'd much rather have Wi-Fi than wampum, so I'm glad that Western civilization won. So if we're using it as a means to punish evil, then I'm all for it. It's just so often nowadays it is used as a purveyor of evil because of the hands of the people it belongs in. It's similar to my position on the death penalty. I don't believe there's any biblical case to be made against the death penalty. Any. I don't think that one exists. I think opposing the death penalty on its face is actually unbiblical. Now, am I eager to give the Biden Justice Department new ways to prosecute the death penalty? Not really. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that the death penalty is not ethical. Quite the contrary. Even in the New Testament, Jesus is on a cross for crimes he didn't commit. He's flanked by two people who committed the crimes that were worthy of, in that society, getting executed. One of them confesses his guilt. Jesus does not say, hey, you're now being unfairly prosecuted. You said you were sorry. That's not what he says, is it? No, he said, you'll join me in paradise today. What needed to happen for him to join Jesus in paradise today?
Die.
Yeah, he had to finish getting executed. Otherwise, he wasn't going to join Jesus in paradise today if he didn't get executed for the crimes that he committed. You see what I'm saying? In fact, the reason why Jesus says, today you'll join me in paradise, is what does that guy say? We deserve what's coming to us. We're guilty. This man is not. Admitting guilt, self-awareness, form of repentance, right? And so because of that, Jesus says, all right, when they're done executing you for the crimes you committed and you've got it coming, you'll join me in paradise. Have eternal forgiveness, but there must be temporal consequences before we get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now, do I think all sexual predators, groomers, and pedophiles, if convicted, should be executed? Yes. But specifically, am I anxious to give Merrick Garland more reasons to execute people, even if they're justified reasons? Not necessarily. Social compact is broken, and Merrick Garland's idea of justice is clearly not my own. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the problem I had with the worldview test that Aaron scored 100% on. And we talked with Dan Smithwick at Nehemiah Institute about that at the time, and I mentioned to him, there were answers to questions that I knew the answer you wanted because it's the biblically correct answer theoretically. But practically, are we sure we want pagans to be the ones doing this stuff? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We're in this position where we don't even want to win the argument for various icky reasons. Or when we win the argument, we aren't willing to mete out the punishment. I mean, we're like, a Quaker can be winning every single argument. When the punishment time comes and you hand that Quaker a gun, they're not going to use it.
Correct.
The other side's going to take it and shoot you.
Yes. Yeah. Which is the opposite problem, but opposite direction, same problem, but in the opposite direction. Correct. Yeah.
Next, Summer Helton says, you're recommending that Christian parents pull their kids from public schools. What do you recommend for Christian teachers, though?
I would recommend you be Christians. That's what I would recommend. Like, do you know why I've never endorsed a product I don't believe in the history of this show? Going back to when it was 3 hours a day on the 89th radio market in the country in Des Moines, Iowa. Never happened. Never endorsed a candidate I didn't believe in. Never endorsed an ideology or a faction I didn't believe in. You know why? Because I'm a Christian and my life is not my own. I was bought at a high price. And I have a king. And I have to do what he says. In fact, I want to do what he says because of what he's already done for me. He's already demonstrated he loves me more than I could possibly love myself. He's already demonstrated he's wiser and better than I could ever possibly be. So it's not just that I have to do what he says, I want to. Because he's a good king. He's the King of Kings. So when people before tried to get me to do things that were in violation of my belief system, the answer was no, I'm not going to do that. You could do that too. No, I'm not going to teach that curriculum. No, we're not putting rainbows up in the classroom. I mean, just imagine if 10% of Christian teachers did that across the country. And there were like mass firings of that 10%. The backlash against that would be unsustainable. Unsustainable. But we don't push the point. So I would urge you to be Christians. Do you think if any of the church fathers or any of the apostles had your job? They teach kids they're descended from monkeys because that's what they have to do to get a paycheck. Do you think that? Peter's like, wait a minute. I didn't have to get crucified upside down, let alone right side up. I just had to teach kids whatever Caesar said. Well, why didn't anybody tell me this, Todd? I could have escaped this whole martyr thing. I would just urge you to be Christians. Not doing that. Just follow Daniel's lead. On the stuff that doesn't violate what God says, you get the best I have. The stuff that God says no to, my answer is no. Just imagine if we just did that. See, we did do that. For centuries, we did stuff like that. And that's how Christendom flourished before there was ever such a thing as a U.S. Constitution. Before we ever fired, before we saw the whites of their eyes. Sometimes we act as if there was like no Christianity before America, when it's the other way around. America is what gave birth to Christianity is what gave birth to America. I mean, the willingness to suffer for what we believe. I mean, I'm just telling you you need to say no to some blue-haired, 700-pound, quadruple morbidly obese cat lady, butch dyke, teacher union hack. Your forefathers jumped into the mouths of lions. See, and we're like, see on the flip side. I'm not asking for, I'm just telling you to tell the cat lady to go stick her where the sun don't shine. Not doing that. Thanks, though. I'm just telling you, particularly the men. I'm really more concerned about the men more than anything else. I'm just telling you to tell a woman who couldn't bench press what you can curl. Yeah, we're not doing that. But thank you. Appreciate it. Not happening. Just be Christians. And you know what would happen if you would just be Christians? Probably wouldn't have to be sitting here telling all the Christian parents to get their kids out of the schools. Just be Christians. You know why nobody here is going to ask me to do something that they know will violate my faith? Because they already know what my answer is. Now, they may decide one day that, hey, now that you won't cross those lines, there may one day arise a Pharaoh who knows not Joseph, right? New people in charge here, and there's no amount of performance we could give that would justify not crossing those lines. And they'll ask those things. What do you think my answer will be? Nope. I guess I'll just be doing this somewhere else. But we won't say no. So I would just urge the Christian teachers to be Christians. I'm not teaching that stuff. You know how we got evolution into the schools? We got it into the schools because one teacher named Scopes in Tennessee refused to teach creation. Changed the entire system. Huh. What if just a few of us on the other end said, yeah, we're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. But thank you. Appreciate it. No pronouns in my classroom. Well, they'll fire us. Okay. People who had your faith and had black skin 60 years ago took on high-pressure water hoses. They'd have loved to just get fired from a job. They were waterboarded, literally, with a hose. I mean, the idea that stuff's just going to change organically, no, it won't. And God wants us to be willing to suffer like that because it's what draws people to the faith, is that level of conviction. You know, like Jesus' suffering drew men to him. I know it's easier just to watch Fox News, blog, get pissed off, and vote Republicans who hate you and won't do anything for you. I know that's easier. I understand. It's also extremely ineffective, and one of the main reasons we're in the position we're in now. Do your faith. Do it. I can't think of a better time to pitch show swag than after that message. So we're going to do it right now. Steve 10 is the discount. We should create a shirt. We're just going to yell at you. Maybe that's our next swag. All right. But if you'd like the show swag we have so far, or any of the other show swag from the shows here that are much nicer than we are, code Steve10 when you go to shopblazemedia.com. That's shopblazemedia.com. Use the code Steve10 to get 10% off, whether you want to honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg, ironically, sarcastically, for overturning Roe. Couldn't have done it without her. Or the new Truth Be Told, candle shining in the darkness swag that we have going on right now. I've got the old logo shirt on today. Shopblazemedia.com. Use code Steve10 to get 10% off with the code Steve10 at shopblazemedia.com.
One more. M. Nessel says, please stop trying to convert each other and don't let the small-minded pit you against each other. Just carry on the message of Romans, please. You three have such beautiful harmony. Well, thank you, M. I'm beautiful. He's beautiful. He's beautiful. Gosh darn it, people like us.
Maybe that's the t-shirt. Deace Show. Beautiful harmony.
Isn't there a commandment against bearing false witness? All right, we're going to stick around and do that overtime I teased earlier. For the rest of you, see you tomorrow. Romans 8:28.